Wisdom, the final frontier to true knowledge. Welcome to Wisdom Trek, where our mission is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. Hello, my friend. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, your captain on our journey to increase wisdom and create a living legacy. Thank you for joining us today as we explore wisdom on our second millennium of podcast. This is day 1256 of our trek, and it is Worldview Wednesday. Creating a biblical worldview is important in order to have a proper perspective on today's current events. To establish a biblical worldview, it is required that we also have a proper understanding of God and His Word. Our focus for the next several months will be, on Worldview Wednesday, Mastering the Bible, through a series of brief insights. These insights are extracted from a book by the same title from one of today's most prominent Hebrew scholars, Dr. Michael S. Heiser. This book is a collection of insights designed to help you to better understand the Bible. When we let the Bible be what it is, we can understand it as the original readers did and as the original writers intended. Each week, we'll explore two additional insights. So today, Mastering the Bible, the Ancient Israelite Culture. And insight number 13 is, Ancient Israelite Culture didn't drop from heaven. People hostile to the Bible often attack it on the basis of the cultural customs found in its pages. For example, critics find easy targets in the biblical patriarchal culture, attitudes towards slavery, and social standards. In criticizing these customs, they make a fundamental mistake of not letting the Bible be what it is. If we believe, and the Bible is very plain in this regard, that God chose the time, place, and people to prompt the writing of what we call the Bible, then the notion that God invented or inspired culture is nonsense. They already had the culture, with many elements common in the wider world in the ancient Near East and Mediterranean. What we see in Scripture is that the Bible presupposes culture. Biblical laws, for instance, presume the cultural practice of polygamy, and this can be found in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 15 through 17 as an example. Yet the Bible doesn't require polygamy. In fact, it portrays it as negative. There are laws regarding slavery, as mentioned in Exodus chapter 21, but there is no record that God installed the institution as something desirable or sanctified. In other words, cultural institutions that we find offensive today, and rightly so, were part of the culture of the people when God prompted to write the Scripture. God didn't first create their culture, nor did He insist that they change their culture before using them to produce the books of the Bible. God knew what He was getting when He called the Semitic people living 3,000 years ago to write the Scriptures. God was not the author of their culture. Only in cases where the practices are tied to Israelite worship, such as the religious calendar, can God be viewed as an instigator of their culture. In some fundamental respects, culture is incidental to God's plan. God gave Israel a body of wisdom literature that laid out broad principles of justice and mercy that transcends all cultures. He kept reminding Israelites through the prophets that the people of all nations would recognize Him as the true God and therefore be members of God's family. The latter point has another aspect to it. God knew that the people would eventually encompass people of every nation. The point is simple but profound. The people of God are independent of culture. Their identity is not bound to a single cultural expression, and this is by design. We need to consider this in our Western world, especially in the United States. Our culture today is no more or less God-ordained than the ancient Israelite or the other Mediterranean cultures. God uses His children regardless of their cultural settings. It makes little sense then for believers to presume that cultural practices in the Bible are something to be imitated for theological purposes. It is equally false for the critics of the Bible to pretend that the Bible can be criticized for its culture. Our focus ought to be on the truth claims of the Bible that transcends all culture. Okay, let's move on to insight number 14. Biblical people embrace the idea of an active supernatural world. What would you think if a Christian friend confided in you that they believed that they had been helped by a guardian angel? Would you expect that there was actually a more rational explanation? What if one of your kids told you about a dream that they had had the previous night where Jesus told them to tell you to call 911 because the elderly neighbor next door was lying on the floor unconscious. Would you go and see? Because we live in the modern world, many of us are prone to doubt such things. We know the ancient people who lacked modern scientific concepts incorrectly attributed natural things to the actions of spiritual beings. Weather is a good example. There are sound scientific reasons why droughts and floods occur and why it rains and it doesn't rain. We feel no need to attribute these things directly to the hand of God, although we look for His providence in the circumstances of such events. The Bible clearly teaches that angels, demons, and Satan are personal spiritual entities. And we'll see in other insights, these sorts of spiritual beings are not the only ones that the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about several spiritual beings that interact with humanity and view the earth as their dominion. Dr. Heiser elaborates that while Christians enthusiastically embrace their belief in the Trinity, they are far more cautious with the rest of the supernatural world. Even though most of us would say that we believe in angels, the idea of angels generally interacting with us loses some support. The dark side is held at an even greater distance. Do we believe that demon possession is real? Many people today, including Christians, consider demon possession as a misdiagnosis of a psychiatric problem. Perhaps we might think that the biblical people didn't understand psychological disorders. And this may be true to an extent, but that does not rule out true demonic control or influence. Also consider, there are the weird passages that deal with the unseen world. Do we really believe that the angels who sinned, mentioned in Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 through 4, are being held hostage by God until the end times? 2 Peter chapter 2 verses 4 and 5, Jude chapter 6, and Revelation chapter 9 would indicate such. Do we believe that people can contact the dead or other spiritual beings? 1 Samuel chapter 28 verses 1 through 19 gives us this example. How would the Old Testament prohibition against doing these sort of things make sense if they weren't possible? And this can be found in Deuteronomy chapter 18 verses 9 through 14. People living in biblical times would have no such intellectual struggles. They were predisposed to believing in an animate supernatural world that regularly intersects with their own. Is it possible that our modern Christian subcultures have trained us to think that our theology precludes these sorts of experiences? If we want to understand Scripture, we cannot think like modern skeptics. We need to let the Bible be what it is. There is no need to protect the Bible by rationalizing away passages that we do not understand. We need to put on the author's glasses and see it from their perspective. It would be good for us to learn what the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Corinth in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 5. We destroy every proud obstacle that keeps people from knowing God. We capture their rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Christ. And that will conclude this week's lesson on another 2 insights from Dr. Heiser's book, Mastering the Bible. Next Worldview Wednesday, we will continue with 2 additional insights. I believe that you'll find each of these Worldview Wednesdays an interesting topic to consider as we build our biblical worldview. Tomorrow we will continue with our 3-minute humor nugget that will provide you with a bit of cheer, which will help you to lighten up and live a rich and satisfying life. So encourage your friends and family to join us, and then come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, Creating a Legacy. If you'd like to listen to any of the past 1,255 treks or read the Wisdom Journals, they are all available at wisdom-trek.com. And I encourage you to subscribe to Wisdom Trek on your favorite podcast player so that each day's trek will be downloaded to you automatically. And thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, but most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal each day. And as we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and then leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward. Enjoy your journey, and then create a great day every day. See you tomorrow.